Okay, just a quick unpackaging video of some reorders on some idea cards that I just got in. Some of these are reorders of some fairly recent videos, lessons that we did for the YouTube channel. But in this video right here, I kind of talk about some things in terms of visual depth, in terms of distance, and composing your imagery. And which brings me to the idea that I should do a video just based on compositional arrangements with kind of your depth of field in mind, and how to, for the beginning scenic stamper, and how to compose your cards based on dimensions of your cards and what type of imagery you're using, and kind of the order and process in terms of the thinking process that you would use to arrange your different compositions with the different fields in mind, meaning things like background, sky, midground, and foreground, okay? In scenic stamping, we're usually talking about something like 3-4 layers of depth or something like that, in terms of creating, I don't know, your average scene, And the background could be something as simple as, or sky can be as simple as just a little thin layer of, blue sky or something like that, Just kind of a little peekaboo area in there. But that would be considered a layer of depth, when we're talking about, space. And we have some background trees right here, midground, and foreground right here. Okay, so yeah, we'll do that. I think that's a good subject matter for a video. Some people, when they just kind of start in scenic stamping and creating scenes, the idea of where to start in terms of the type of imagery and scene they're building comes to mind, and how to use perspective. What goes where, within a scene, okay? So we'll do a video on that, and then maybe I'll do it right after I shoot this one right here. So anyways, some more idea cards here. Okay, just a quick review here. Taking a look at some scenes that I just had printed up. These are a lot of reorders right here, but I do have some scenes here that are done on some larger sizes, usually half-page scenes, that I've done, and there's a little bit of a different spirit to working in larger formats than, say, a quarter-page type of card scene. Now, some of these are larger scenes that I just happen to reduce down to the quarter-page size, but a lot of them are, well, it looks like I have 3 of them here that are half-page scenes. This is a fairly recent, relatively speaking, scene that I've done, but when you start working in larger sizes like this, we're talking about kind of an exponentially larger range of scenes you can come up with, because we're talking about a wider range of depth that you can do. Okay, so in this one right here we have foreground, okay, which is this ledge here with these trees, okay, and then there's this kind of background, which would be the next depth of imagery, okay, and it's clouds down here, okay, it's like saying that the clouds are at the base of the mountain, so that would be the next I don't know, layer of depth. Then we have the mountain coming up from that, and then we have the same clouds in the background, in addition to there's the sun and some birds, okay, so we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4 different layers of depth in this scene. When you start getting into 4 and 5, we're talking about a lot of different possibilities as far as your imagery goes. On something like this, we see, this is one image right here, okay, the covered bridge, and then we have foreground in here, so we're talking about 2 layers of depth in here. Now, this one right here is a really faded purposely, you know, kind of foggy looking scene. But there is a little peekaboo area of sky back there, so you can kind of, you know, say that's background, another layer of depth in the back. So there's 1, 2, 3 layers of depth. But again, this is a quarter-page card. You could put 4 layers of depth or 5 in, you know, something like this size. I would work this way, kind of in Western perspective. You know, I think it's usually the things that are lower on the composition represent things that are typically closer to you, and the things high represent things that are farther back. I think I was told that I think in Eastern perspective, in some cultures, things that are higher up represent some things that are farther back in time, was it? I don't know, that's what one of my professors mentioned. Okay, now this one's a little bit different because this one's a half-page scene. It's been reduced down, but it's done on the horizontal, okay, landscape format. But the things that you can also do on something like this is there's a lot more possibilities, of course, when you're going elongated to put things, you know, kind of framing off your main subject matter or whatever would happen to be the thing that, you know, would kind of lead your eye into somewhere. It doesn't have to be. I mean, I can have trees going across this whole thing and it could be something about that. But in this case, it kind of peekaboos, you know, through this, and we have the crooked path leading back into the scenery back here, but we have, again, it's kind of sky, you know, cabin. I guess these trees in the background are another layer of depth. So there's a little tiny layer of sky up here. Then we have the background trees, this cabin. So there's 1, 2, 3, and then kind of 4. This one's kind of the same image that kind of leads into there, but I would call it 4 layers. This one's kind of a little bit of an experiment. Using 3-dimensional media. It works good like in a shadow box type of format, but I put that, I think it's called reindeer moss, and I just put it down here in the corners, so there's actually this 3-dimensional spongy thing. It doesn't look good, really, if it's just on a piece of paper and you kind of tack that on there because you have this kind of this, you know, dimensional thing sticking out but from it, but kind of in one of those little, you know, a framed little area that this scene is in, the original, it looks pretty good because it's recessed back there. But I always felt that, you know, we're kind of not really experimenting around enough with 3-dimensional media or objects. When it comes to things like scenic stamping, I've always thought leaves in the foreground, you know, like real leaves or dried leaves would be kind of interesting, like a fall foliage type of thing. Or I don't know, there's like this little fence down here. It'd be kind of interesting to have a little piece of wire or something like that representing some barbed wire or something, you know. Let's say if you had a farm or something and you kind of did some actual barbed wire, or wire, I don't know. Barbed wire isn't real handy at your local store, but we can kind of make something out like that if you have something like that going on. Or a little branch or twigs and things like that might be kind of interesting in scenic stamping. It makes it harder to mail something like that, but if you're just going to display it or you're going to scan it off, you know, why not give it a try. You can do something with photo stamping and things that are actually in the photo, maybe put it down there. I mean, it could be a temporary thing where the actual original piece isn't really the you know, the finished product so much as the scan is. You know, most of us are posting things on, you know, Facebook or whatever, you know, social media or something like that. So it could be the scans themselves, or, you know, the digital files can be the kind of more of the finished pieces, because it kind of makes it impractical if you have like things like sticking out from this, you know. But I don't know, I think we can play around with that a lot, and especially in scenic stamping where, you know, things from nature, found objects, rocks or something like that are readily available. We can you know, put something down like on a beach or a river or something like that and put little actual rocks next to it or something like that and just take a photo of it or scan it. Okay, this one again is the landscaped format. This is, I believe the original is 4 1/4 by 11, so it's a half of 8.5 by 11, I believe. But A lot of possibilities when you use this kind of elongated format here in terms of framing. But doing these things, of course, there's a little bit more space to cover if it's a double, double the size of what you're normally working on, especially, when you start moving up into that 8.5 by 11 format, the full page type of thing. I know some of that used to do like 11 by 17s, and those were enormous. Okay, now this one's an 8.5 by 11 scene, so we have kind of a little bit more depth in here, but this is basically, it's one, I would call it two, I don't know, 3 layers of depth in here. It's not pushed too much to the extreme. I guess you can call these trees in the background that I stamped in there another kind of layer of depth that's kind of all within the same range here, although it's a little bit of a deeper space right here. But just a lot of possibilities as far as visual dialogue going on in here, with the 3 different waterfalls in here, and the ability to kind of do the same treatments on them. Quarter page card would be just something like that, which would look okay, I would format it a little bit differently in terms of the foreground, but when you add all that extra space in here, and again, the original is a full 8.5 by 11, but I don't work on that size too often. I should, though. For videos like this, I would really have to edit that down. I mean, gosh, I've done some of these videos, and some of them are, like an hour long or something like that, and that might be a quarter page, if I'm doing some kind of really extended treatment of, or in-depth treatment of some scene. Okay, and I don't know, a lot of people like this one, just the more kind of more natural lighting type of scene. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know. I guess that's 5 layers of depth. Kind of break it down. Although in reality, this is kind of like background, midground, and foreground. So I really consider that 3, and then you have clouds back in there. So you can do it. Adding depth in there. But of course, the larger you go, you have a lot more space to fill in, so there's a lot more possibilities. This one's kind of really just playing around. That was a recent one as well. Don't have to talk about relatively recent, but I don't know. This one right here is kind of like 1, 2, and then you have that sky back there, and it's 3 layers of depth. A layer of depth, can just be, I've just put a few streaks of blue ink in there or something like that, I think it was, just to kind of create that kind of, I don't know, what would you call it, amorphic sky or whatever, just for a little bit of texture back in there. And I thought that kind of grounded the, I don't know, not really, maybe that's not in terms of grounding it, but I don't know, just kind of adding some sort of, I don't know, statement about sky in there. It would look okay, just blank too, but I felt that blue in there really helped. Oh yeah, when I was doing this one, there's a video on this one, but putting that blue right down here in the base areas right like that. I don't know, when I was doing it, it occurred to me that that really kind of brought it all together in terms of the transition from these shadows out into the blank, untreated area, which I normally don't do, but I really like that look there. This one right here, okay, just more of that recent autumn one. Vistaprint had a sale going on, so I ordered more of this one, but I didn't the last time because of their sale parameters. I wanted more of that autumn one. I really enjoyed using a lot of the gel pens on that. But again, I don't know, what do you have? 1, 2, and 3, layers of depth, kind of. So, I don't know, maybe I should play around with that sometime. Try to go for like 6 or 7 layers of, visual depth within that depth of field, but I don't know, 1, 2, 3 kind of layers of depth in here. I mean, I don't know, that's what I consider it. What is a layer of depth, is it 1 mile or something like that, in a scene like this, where we're talking about deep space, I don't know, that mountain probably, is reflective of something that would be, I don't know, 10 miles away or something like that, you know, from where you are on this vantage point. I don't know. I don't know. Let's do something like that, though, sometime. I think I'll do a video that involves creating depth within a scene, just in terms of the compositional aspects of it and how to create that. Sometimes people say, well, they're not really sure where to, you know, place images, you know, in terms of what comes where within a scene, and we'll talk about kind of the Western perspective treatment of depth within a scene and where to place your images, you know, kind of for the beginning scenic stamper, and where to build it from there. But there isn't really any type of really specific area, but I'll, you know, try to talk about it then. You know, what I'm talking about is, in terms of specifics, is that, you know, what comes first, this foreground right here, or did I do the midground, you know? But you can really do either one. Naturally, if you have an idea that you want to do foreground, then you're not going to do the midground thing way down here, okay? If you did that, you would have more sky to deal with, though. Or, you know, when you place something, when you start placing your foreground, if you did that first, you would just have to say, okay, well, do I want some sky? Because I have this thing to go on here, so just, you have to stamp it accordingly, you know, based on the dimensions of your surface that you're doing and what imagery you're going to be working with. So doesn't have to be all kind of planned out ahead of time. You can always just do, you know, mine, I have kind of a loose planning idea, but a lot of it happens within, you know, the scene itself, and I just kind of compose as I go along. But I might have an idea that, you know, I want to do some things in the foreground here that, like in this case, that are reflective of the things going out here in the midground, meaning fall colors in this area as well as this area, so I had to leave room for both. But we'll do a video on something like that pretty soon. So I don't know, there's some more idea cards here to send out as kind of color compositional and I don't know, technique ideas for the scenic stampers out there.